Hi everyone!
Welcome to In Our Defence, the podcast designed to give you all the advice you need whilst going through the trials and tribulations of life to and at the bar. Now, we wouldn't be a legal podcast if we didn't give you a legal disclaimer.
Whilst every effort has been made to ensure the content of this podcast is accurate, none of it is to be taken as professional advice in any capacity. We might talk a lot about a lot of things in a lot of detail, but in our defence, we are still learning too.
Hi everyone!
Hi guys!
Welcome back to episode 4. 4?
Episode 4, that is crazy.
Episode 4, isn't it? We hope that you had a lovely festive period, a very happy new year. We are looking forward to kicking off the new year with lots of exciting content. We've got lots of good ideas coming up, and we hope that you'll stick around for at least the first part of the year.
Can I just add in, thank you guys. The second episode hit 200 views and our third episode hit 100 views. So thank you to everybody who took the time to watch those episodes.
Especially when it's been so busy over Christmas.
Yeah, and we were particularly happy with last week's episode and we thought it was one of our best ones. So hopefully we can continue, now we're in the swing of things, making good content for you guys. So
absolutely. Today, guys, is the 3rd of January. That's the day we are recording. This won't be coming out until Saturday, but this is Wednesday the 3rd, which is a very big day for those, well, I was going to say on the bar course, but it's not just the bar course, is it? It's any aspiring barrister, because today is the day that the pupillage applications opened for this round. That is going to be my life for the next, 7th of February.
Yeah, super nerve-wracking but exciting time. And good luck to everybody who's writing applications, going to interviews. I hope we see some of you at the interviews and we can be in it together, because it's going to be scary. But we're ready to go. We're chomping at the bit to get these applications sent off, aren't we, Lou?
Absolutely. And I think as well, perhaps we can touch on how we're getting on each week, because we're all going to be in the same position. We want to be as real with you guys as we can. We've always said that.
I think any barrister will tell you have to get a point where you're comfortable with a bit of rejection. You're probably going to get some failed applications the first time round. If you don't, you're exceptionally lucky, and I am very, very pleased for you and well done. Yeah, just keep going, guys. Don't lose faith. We're all in this together. Me and Lou are going to keep pumping on with everybody else. Don't lose your faith in the career.
I love how the microphones have gone now, by the way.
I know. Well, guys, the microphone last week caused us a lot of turmoil because this thing right here made me sound like I was underwater. So we've parked the microphones for now. They might be coming back. We'll see.
It might make an appearance in the new year.
Yeah.
So, as you know, guys, each week we have the best of the week segment. This week we're going to change it to topic of the week, purely because the thing I want to discuss isn't the best of the week. It doesn't deserve that title in my mind. Yeah. So it's going to be the topic of the week for this week. I just want to be sensitive and alive to some of the content that we're discussing. Again, slight health warning. I am going to be discussing murder. And so if that's something that you don't think you want to listen to, or you might find distressing, then maybe just skip maybe 4 or 5 minutes ahead. So my topic of the week this week is the tragic and horrifying killing of Brianna Ghey. On the 20th of December, 2 16-year-olds were found guilty of her murder. And the reason why I'm mentioning that this week is because at Manchester Crown Court, after the jury had deliberated, Mrs. Justice Yip had said that she was going to sentence the pair this month, so this January, and I'm conscious that obviously they haven't been sentenced yet, and I don't want to touch or press on that too heavily. So Mrs. Justice Yip said she would sentence the pair and decide whether to lift the reporting restrictions. It was actually my sister who asked me the question and what I thought, whether or not they should be lifted. This topic isn't from Inner Temple. This has kind of come off the back of an organic conversation that I was having with my sister as to whether or not it should be lifted. It's a huge topic of debate. A lot of
controversy around it.
Controversy, yeah, exactly. It is a very controversial thing. And of course, everyone remembers the Jamie Bolger case and the fact that Venables and Thompson were named At the close of the Jamie Bulger case, the judge lifted the reporting restrictions so that both Venables and Thompson could be named. They were both 11 at the time. And the judge was of the view at that point that the interest of the general public took precedence over the right and the need to protect the two children, because there are competing rights and competing priorities, and there's a balance, isn't there, I think, to be struck.
I think it's also a really interesting comparison to think about the Jamie Bulger case and to think about John Venables and Robert Thompson. They were exposed, their names were exposed, even due to their age. They were so young at the time, but due to the severity of the crime and due to the balance of the human rights, I guess,
there's the desire of the media and the public to identify culprits.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on if you're interested in criminal justice. Definitely a case to watch out for.
And of course, it goes without saying that our thoughts and prayers and love is with Brianna's family.
Yeah, always. Hopefully on a slightly more light-hearted note. I mean, that is obviously an awful case, but I'm moving over now to family law. So this is something that I found on the Inner Temple Daily Digest, and this was one from today.
We haven't touched on any family law yet, have we, either?
No, we haven't, but I did say in the last podcast that it's something that we both would like to integrate, because we both are super interested in it. So this has come from Pump Court Chambers, which have chambers in London and Winchester, I believe. And it was written by Jennifer Swan, so she's one of the barristers at Pump Court. And the headline of this blog post is "Fathers Without PR, Where Do They Stand?"
For those listeners who might not know what PR means.
Yeah, so PR stands for parental responsibility. So parental responsibility is the legal rights and responsibilities that a parent has over a child. So by law, that is the birth mother, the married father if the parents were married at the time of birth, or the unmarried father if that father is on the birth certificate, or alternatively if there's a parental responsibility order in place. So this blog post comes off the back of the case of Ree S, in brackets, a child, that was in 2023, the citation of which is Civ 706. I will put that on the screen and it will also be linked in the bio below. Now, the whole blog post discusses the issue of the father that doesn't have parental responsibility. So this might be an unmarried father who isn't named on the birth certificate, or any other father that doesn't fall under the legislation for parental responsibility. To give a bit of context, public law proceedings governs the care and placement order of a child, so whether a child is to be put up for adoption. In public law proceedings, a father without parental responsibility is not entitled to automatically be a party in the proceedings, which is just the way the law works, unfortunately. And the blog post sort of examines the position of those fathers that aren't automatically a party. So they can obviously apply for joinder to be joined as a party, which will often be granted without opposition most of the time. The blog post touches on the fact that until very recently, if you wanted to oppose a father being joined as a party to the proceedings, you would have to dig up case law from years and decades ago to be able to discuss that legal issue. Now, this case that was decided in 2023, it was June of this year that it was decided, makes that a little bit clearer for the father's position. Interestingly, throughout family law, especially concerning child proceedings, the paramount principle is the welfare of the child. Now, interestingly, in this specific case, the court held that the child's welfare is important, but it was not paramount, which I thought was super interesting because that completely diverges from everything we've known before regarding parental responsibility and child proceedings. there is also a presumption coming off the back of this case that a father who applies to be joined as a party that application will be granted unless there is a justifiable reason for refusing it. This is obviously the same principle as came from the decades-old legislation, but it is a little bit more defined. And also, what I thought was really interesting is there is now no requirement for a father without parental responsibility to show an arguable case. I also thought this was super interesting as these principles raise completely new points of law, and I think it shows a lot of development in the law and how we treat fathers without parental responsibility.
Yeah.
Historically, the focus was always on the mother, especially in child proceedings. So to see the inclusion of fathers without parental responsibility is super interesting. And I think, again, that is sort of a case and a point of law that would be interesting to follow too.
I agree. I'm just going to take this opportunity now, India, if it's okay, to plug another podcast called Professionally Embarrassing, and it's a family law podcast. And just that case is something that, I mean, I can't say if they have touched on it, but I know they do. They discuss a lot of family cases. They are both exclusively family practitioners, I believe.
Yeah.
But we'll link it below. It's a really, really good, really, really interesting pod for those who wanting a career at the family bar.
Yeah, and I must say we did feel slightly inspired by those two women to start our own
Slightly,
podcast.
very.
So, guys, we have decided to implement a new segment this week. Now, this new segment is because it is the new year. We're all doing our resolutions, and something I've seen floating about quite a lot over social media is the 2024 ins and outs. Now, I'm sure we've all done our own personal ins and outs because I definitely have. I've got quite a few things on my ins and outs for myself, but I thought it would be interesting to touch on our legal and professional ins and outs. So things that we want to implement into our career and things that we want to stop doing. So I think if we first start with the outs, we can get those out of the way and then we can talk more positively about the ins afterwards. Our first out today is LinkedIn toxicity. So something that me and Lou both want to get rid of in 2024 is going on LinkedIn, comparing ourselves to others and sort of looking at what everybody else is doing and thinking you're not doing good enough. And this is something we are all totally and utterly guilty of. I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate. Seeing everybody on LinkedIn saying, you know, I've passed the bar course, I passed the LPC, and obviously I was so happy for everybody. But obviously when you're not in that position and you've worked really hard to be in the same position, it can be really difficult. So that's something that I definitely want to stop doing, because that's something that I know I personally find really hard, is comparing myself to people constantly, how well other people are doing. And I just think it's really important to remember that you are doing the best you can. You are exactly where you need to be. You are thriving. You are doing amazingly. And don't discount or discredit yourself because of what somebody else is doing.
When I did pass the bar, I posted on LinkedIn, and it took me ages to actually post it because I was mindful of how I felt. And to be clear, I should say as well, we're not saying don't post your achievements on LinkedIn. Do. You absolutely shout from the rooftops. You should be so proud.
Yeah.
But don't fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others on LinkedIn. And I did this because, as you say, India, you know, you find yourself when you don't get the results that you wanted or things haven't gone your way, you sort of find yourself looking on LinkedIn for the wrong reasons. And rather than looking at it to kind of, you know, post your achievements or support others, you know, it becomes quite toxic and you become envious. And I felt for a long time that I had been left behind by my contemporaries because I'm older and I'd gone to the bar, I'd gone to uni late, I did the bar late, and compared to a lot of junior barristers around me, they are my age, and they've been, you know, some of them are 3 or 4 years cool. I allowed myself to think that because I wasn't there that I'd failed somehow.
Yeah.
I think it's being mindful to use LinkedIn, use social media, use your platforms, but make sure that you're using them positively. So the next out, and this is the big out for me, for 2024 is imposter syndrome, and I say it's a big out. It's going to be a struggle because I have lived with imposter syndrome for the past, at the very least, 5 years, but probably longer. Every single time I have done something, so I've now passed the bar, I've been called to the bar, and I remember on one of the happiest days of my life was when I got caught, and I was on cloud nine. It was genuinely the best day of my life.
Yeah.
And yet the next day I woke up and I thought, I'm really, really happy about that, but I shouldn't be doing this. That's not me. That's not my life. That's not me. You can't do this. And this little voice, my inner saboteur, was there going, no, not you. This isn't you.
Yeah.
You can't do it. You're going to fail now. There's a really good book that my friend told me about. I feel like it's called the CHIMP Paradox. It's about mind management, and it's by Professor Steve Peters, and I've downloaded it onto my Kindle that I got for Christmas.
She's a Kindle girly, guys. I've been a Kindle girly since 2012, and it is the best thing ever. I love my Kindle.
But essentially, the whole concept is that how you can manage your chimp or your inner saboteur or this imposter syndrome, I think, is kind of what it's about. Yeah. Going into 2024, that's what I need to do. No one else sat those exams. You and I did. We have worked so hard, and I think it's taking a moment to actually say, when you have that moment of self-doubt and this imposter syndrome, of saying, well, actually, no, you have done it. And
you're worth it.
I'm really trying not to make a joke about the L'Oreal advert. I'm not gonna do it.
Can I just add on that topic? I remember I went to see Lou shortly before she got called to the bar, and I remember saying, I was like, are you excited? I was like, I'm so excited for you. This is such a fun and exciting time. And I think I was more excited than you were, because
you were.
Yeah, because Lou was so in her own head about thinking, is this me? Like, am I worth this? Is this what I want to do? Like, am I good enough for this? And I was just saying to her, Lou, you've worked so hard. This is what you're destined to do. This is you all over. Like, you've worked so hard for this, and you deserve it.
Trust yourself. Like, take comfort in the fact that you have done something and achieved it.
I think that leads us in quite nicely to our first in of 2024, which is being your own best cheerleader. I know we touched on this in the last episode or the episode before. We touched on it in one of the recent episodes, how Lou was saying that that's something she's always struggled with, is sort of bigging herself up. And again, as pupillage applications are looming, I think that making sure that you know your worth, again, know that you deserve it, and everything you've done in your career has led up to this point of you applying for pupillage. Ultimately, putting your best foot forward is gonna be bigging yourself up. You deserve this, and you deserve to get where you want to go. So make sure that you are bigging yourself up as much as possible without being cocky.
If you do struggle, and I know, India, you and I are fortunate because we did find each other on the bar course, and we have become such great friends. And you know, I would genuinely not have got through that without you, I don't think. Well, no, I don't think. I mean, the amount of times we've had to say to one another, you know, no, come on, you have got this. You know. So, and it goes back to what I was saying before. It's far easier to talk about your friends and your loved ones than it is yourself. Go and ask your friend. You know, say, you know. Yeah. Can you describe me in 2 words? Can you give me a time where I've done this? Because sometimes it's easy to forget as well. Yeah. Especially if you know, things that you've done at work. If I'm doing something like an application for whatever at work, or you know, or my PDR at work, and I'm looking for an example, and I'm sat there thinking, I can't think of anything. I've not done anything. It will be one of my colleagues that will say, well, hang on, what about the time we did this, or what about the time we did that? You know, and you know, use them to jog your memory, but also use them to sort of, you know, take inspiration, you know, and how they see you.
And again, I think that leads us on to another in. We're doing very well with the flow of this today, guys. Our next in is all about asking for help. So, Lou, do you want to take this one away?
Yeah, absolutely. So, ask for help from your family, of course, but especially the bar. I can't speak as much for those wanting to be solicitors, because I haven't done the LPC, I don't know. I feel like there's this kind of fear of asking for help from professionals, and practicing barristers or practicing solicitors or just anyone involved in the profession and whatsoever. Don't be ashamed to reach out and ask for help, because I've done it and the response I've always had has always been positive. A lot of people have said, you know, I wish there had been someone for me to ask. And so I think they get a lot, you know, from it as well, and they'll be flattered. I think, Indy, you said in the first episode, it's very unlikely anyone's going to turn around and say, no, go away, I'm not going to help you. Mm-hmm. If you do get someone who tells you to go away and not ask for help, then you've asked the wrong person and you don't want their advice.
Absolutely.
Don't be ashamed of that. There's nothing wrong in asking for help and advice.
My final in for 2024 is that I want to do a lot of networking. Now, this is something that I have always tried to do. Me and Lou have always got our little networking caps on, going out. When we go to Lincoln's Inn events, we're always there working the room, don't worry about it. So this leads me on to quite a nice story, actually. So me and Lou went to the Lincoln's Inn residential weekend, and if you don't know what that is, essentially Lincoln's Inn host a residential weekend in Leeds. They do a couple of different ones. I think the other ones maybe down south somewhere. One of these residential weekends is 5 of your qualifying sessions. So when you want to be a barrister, you have to have 10 qualifying sessions. And obviously one of these weekends counts as 5 of those points. So it's a really good thing to get involved in, not only for that, but also for the networking, for the experience. So we both me and Lou had to do a criminal brief and a civil brief alongside a 5-minute presentation and an ethics workshop. On this weekend. We'll get to that next week. I think is our first one about qualifying sessions. We'll get to the whole story about how my experience, because my experience was particularly rough doing these briefs, but we'll get to that next week. Stay tuned. At the dinners, you are sat sort of randomly. I think you can sit with your friends, but the benches and the bar are scattered randomly around the room. So it's a real opportunity to get networking with people. I was sat on a table with a circuit judge. I didn't know that she was a circuit judge until I checked her badge, which said her honour judge. You can imagine me sitting there terrified next to her, but she was so lovely and we got chatting. On the final day, I scouted her down because I wanted to get her email. So I was running around. I said, Lou, hang on a second, I am going to get her email if it is the last thing I do. So I went to find her. She was so lovely. She gave me her email and I asked her if she would be able to organise some judicial marshalling. Now, if you guys are unaware of judicial marshalling, it's essentially where you go and sit with a judge. You either sit on the bench with the judge or you can sit in the courtroom depending on the judge's sort of practice and their procedures that they follow. I was super lucky to go up to Liverpool and sit with this lovely circuit judge, and she let me sit on the bench with her, which was absolutely amazing. It was a brilliant experience over 2 days in the family court in Liverpool. Essentially, this all came from networking. So if you speak to people, get your name out there. Don't be afraid of asking. My motto is, if you don't ask, you don't get. If I hadn't hunted her down, got her email and asked if I could do some judicial marshalling with her, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And that opportunity has been really invaluable and really amazing. You know, I got to see advocacy from the other side. I got to see which techniques were successful. I got to almost act as the judge and see which techniques would maybe sway me in one direction or the other. So it was absolutely fantastic.
To add yet another meaningful quote to this pod, I think about 3. I always say, and I do always say this, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
100%. And that leads us on quite nicely to the main body of the podcast. I know we've been talking a lot, but that leads us on quite nicely to the main body of the podcast, which is discussing our CVs. Me and Lou have both worked really hard to build quite a good legal CV, if we do say so ourselves. By CV, we're discussing our legal CVs. So this is things we've done on our journey to be barristers. So this is sort of mini pupillage, mooting competitions, judicial marshalling, legal work. This is sort of discounting anything we did before we started on our legal journey, so any work we may have done before that. It's not all about your CV, guys. Ultimately, it's about you, how you present yourself, and you may have the best CV in the world, but you may not have all the other attributes that are needed to be a good barrister, and you may have not a very good CV, but you may be an absolutely fantastic barrister. And it's all, like we said at the beginning, everybody's working at their own pace. You're where you're supposed to be. You're doing amazing. Don't be disheartened if your CV doesn't look like mine or Lou's. It's okay. We're not perfect. Our CVs are far from perfect also.
The first thing I'll say is there is no right or wrong way to do a CV. I will also say I was always told 2 sides of A4. It should be no more 2 sides of A4.
One thing I was told as well, do not add a picture. I know some people can make that mistake regarding legal CVs. That's one thing I was told, don't add a picture. Also, make sure that it's pretty black and white, no colour, sort of pretty boring, but not how I would personally do my CV if I was going to do it creatively, the way I would flourish.
My CV sort of starts at the top with, the basic name, address and all that sort of stuff. I then start with my education, the most recent thing first, obviously, and then all the way down to my GCSEs. I then have my employment history, generally speaking, but then I have, after that, my relevant legal experience. So that's things such as mini pupilages, judicial marshalling, anything I've sort of done in a legal capacity. I haven't done any voluntary work, but I know other people who have done voluntary. I mean, India, we can talk about you and what you're doing at the moment as well. That would be a really, really good thing to sort of put in that section. Then gone on to my professional qualifications, so anything that I've sort of gained whilst working, which might be of relevance. I then talk a little bit about my hobbies and interests. I haven't got a huge paragraph about this, just a very sort of small sort of 3-liner. And then I've got any memberships and my security clearance level as well. I've got that on there. I think as well, this time around in this year, I'm also going to add a section in relation to awards. I was going to say I've been very lucky and won a couple of awards. In true, not going to be an imposter, I'm going to be my biggest cheerleader. I'm not lucky that I won the awards because I worked hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So practicing what I'm preaching here, I won 2 awards, so I'm going to put those in as well. And also, I think I'm going to put in, Jim, you'd agree, but I'm going to put the pod, what we're doing here, that's going to go in as well somewhere.
I have done mine slightly differently to Lou, similar in content but slightly different in structure. So I have got education and qualifications at the start, then I've gone on to certifications. I'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. Then I've done legal experience. Now I've done my legal experience by relevance because that was something I was told could be quite effective. So that's sort of the first thing that stands out of the page when people read. Then I've gone on to employment history, which is not legal. And then I've got a little section at the bottom about interests and achievements as well. I think what would be good to start would be to talk about mini pupillage. So if you don't know, which you may not if you're coming to this as a novice, mini pupillage is the best way to get experience if you want to be a barrister. Now, most chambers, I think, advise that you do around 3 to 4. Is that what you've heard, Lou?
Yeah, I think 3 to 4. I mean, maybe if you're in London, more. I don't know. I think there's a risk if you do too much, you can sort of muddy the water slightly. I'm loath to say this, but you don't want to look desperate. You want to look keen. You want to look enthusiastic, but you don't want to look desperate.
Another thing I've heard is to not go too diverse with the practice areas that you choose for your mini pupillage. So I have got mine mainly in family and crime because that's what I'm interested in. It's important to have maybe a little bit of experience in another sector just so you can maybe discuss why you don't want to go down that path.
I was just about to say the thing.
I know I touched on this a couple of episodes ago, but mini pupillage is essentially a week shadowing a barrister either in court or in chambers. So you go round with them for a couple of days, if you're lucky a week. I know a couple of mine are a week. Have you done any week-long ones, Lou?
Yeah, I've done two 1 week ones and a couple of day ones. Days in like a couple of days.
Another thing I was told is so being from Norwich, a lot of my experience is in Norfolk. I was told to sort of branch out a bit and try get and mini pupillage elsewhere, so I can see whether I like the circuit in a different area. So I have currently done 4 formal mini pupillages, and I have one coming up in January. Now, I know we said 3 to 4, keep it light, but the reason I've got 5 is because 3 of those I did in Norwich. So those were my baseline 3, and then I did one in Manchester, and I've got one upcoming in Liverpool as well. What are you looking like, Lou, on your mini pupillage front?
So I've done 3 mini pupillages. I've thought about doing a 4th one, but I'm in a very fortunate position, and I'm going to say fortunate in that I work in the criminal world, criminal justice system. I'm not a criminal. I've got a lot of experience within the courts because of my job. Is what I'm trying to say.
So you sort of see this day in, day out, don't you, Lou?
Yeah, I've done a family mini pupillage. I've done a civil mini pupillage, and I have done. It sounds bizarre, but I have also done a criminal mini pupillage, despite the fact I work with criminal barristers on a daily basis. I took some leave and actually sort of went and followed the barrister side of things and sort of got things from their point of view. So, and one thing I will add, guys, is that don't be afraid to, if you've had a good experience at a mini pupillage, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, networking, don't be afraid to reach out and go back to the same chambers. They quite like that relationship with them. I really enjoyed my family mini pupillage, and I have built a relationship with that chambers now. And they say, if you want to come back and do another one, we can arrange another one for you. I mean, obviously you still have to apply, you have to go through that process, of course. Yeah. You don't think, oh, I've done it with that chambers now, so I can't go back again. Keep that connection, keep that relationship alive.
I've also done 2 minis with the same chambers as well.
Oh, perfect.
And I found that it's brilliant experience, and getting your name out there as well, getting to network with different people every time. You're not going to meet everybody in chambers the first time you do a mini pupillage. So I think that's a really good bit of advice as well. I agree. So I'll just add in at this point as well, I've also done judicial marshalling in Liverpool as well. I am also interested in sort of the Northern Circuit. So that is why I'm doing a mini pupillage in Liverpool in January. So next week, which is exciting. I'm really excited for that.
Very exciting.
Another thing I will add is when we went on the Lincoln's Inn weekend, I also networked with another barrister who invited me to do a vulnerable witness training day in Sheffield with chambers. And that was really, really insightful. So I was still acting as the witness for the junior barrister training. So I was seeing people that were hopefully going to be me one day, junior barristers, cross-examining me, and I got to see how they were trained, how they were taught, and it was super interesting and really insightful. Had I not have sort of put myself out there like that, I would never have got that opportunity either. So I think that's something that was something really good that came from it too.
As I've touched on, guys, and I mentioned it in the first episode, I've worked for the CPS now for 10 years. That has meant that I have been exposed to a lot of advocacy. I've been exposed to a lot of court proceedings, and I work closely on a daily basis with police officers, barristers, reviewing lawyers. So I have seen it in practice. I appreciate that not everyone has that experience. I am fortunate in that sense. I think there is a lot to be said. I mean, I know I sort of did it in a bit of a backwards order, as I mentioned previously, in that I did my I went to be a paralegal first, and then I did my degree. I know a lot of people who do their degree and then take some time out to be a paralegal to get that experience. I think that's really worth doing. The idea of going straight into practice, having sort of never seen the inside of a courtroom before, terrifies me.
Yeah, and I totally agree.
job as a paralegal or an intern, or
I'm trying right now, guys.
Or if you can't and you can do some voluntary work, and this is a nice segue for you, India, to tell all about what you're doing at the moment, which is amazing.
Thank you. When I came to doing the bar exams the second time, it was a 3-month period from September to December, and I thought I need to do something other than the litigation exams, sort of to take my mind off that to an extent, because it's so heavy, and I needed something that would allow me to focus elsewhere for a couple of days a week. So I was introduced on a mini pupillage by a lovely barrister to a company called Amicus, which are a non-profit organisation, and they do casework for capital defence cases in America. Capital defence cases, if you don't know, are defending people who are on death row. This may be mitigating these offenders to commute them to a life sentence as opposed to the death penalty, which was a lot of the work that I helped with. So essentially it was a casework placement for 3 months where I helped on the casework bundles, I made digests, I made a lot of the bundles more cohesive. As you can imagine, in a capital defence case, there is so much evidence, and if we could just help to alleviate that burden in any way, that was all we set out to do. So that was absolutely amazing. I finished that last week. So fascinating, and it was really interesting to see how the American legal system differed from the UK. Obviously, we don't have the death penalty in the UK, as you well know. So seeing how that was integrated into the law was so fascinating, and it was a really, really insightful experience, and I would recommend it to anybody who's looking for some legal experience. Obviously, you do have to have a law degree, but if you can apply and get involved with Amicus, they are a brilliant organisation, and the staff there are absolutely lovely, and they will do their best to help you out in any way. So I would really, really recommend getting involved in that. Just quickly, another thing I have done is become an independent custody volunteer in Norfolk. So essentially that means that I go to custody centres in and around Norfolk and go and speak to the detainees there. So the detainees will be people that have just been arrested and are waiting to be charged, people that have been charged and are waiting to go to court, or people that are in on remand. So you go in and you discuss with the detainees whether they have been given their human rights and their legal rights under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. And this has also been absolutely amazing and super insightful as well. Obviously, it can be quite emotional sometimes seeing the people that are in there, and it's probably arguably a very distressing time for them to be detained in custody. But yeah, that's also super interesting. Again, something that sort of helps out within the community, which has been really rewarding, and it's all legal experience at the end of the day. So wherever you are in the country, they need independent custody volunteers. They might be called something slightly different because it's under the Police and Crime Commissioner for Norfolk, but definitely get researching, see if there's anything similar in your area, and it's a really good thing to get involved with.
Is it a paid role, India? I can't remember. Is it voluntary?
No. Yeah, it's voluntary, sorry. So both roles are voluntary. That doesn't matter to me at all. Anything that I can do to sort of give back and also could do some legal work for good is good with me. So yeah. So one last little thing. This is not legal related, but it's something very near and dear to me and Lou, and something that I think will actually in the long run help us in a weird way. So when I was asking around on LinkedIn if people had any advice for me with the bar course, I spoke to a lovely girl who is now a barrister in Liverpool. She is really nice and she's done amazing. Her bit of advice to me was that her dancing experience growing up really helped in her pupillage applications, and they really liked the fact that she had that experience on the stage. And That's something that me and Lou have both had as well. I grew up doing musical theatre with a company called Theatre Train, which are amazing. I was there from the age of 5 till I was 18. I had the opportunity to sort of perform at really amazing venues. So we performed at the O2 Arena in London and the Royal Albert Hall. And I also, following an audition process, was able to perform at Disneyland in Paris, which was so amazing. And Lou, you also were in Disneyland Paris performing.
Euro Disney. It's the same thing. Euro Disney. 3 years in a row, we got invited back. It was amazing. So yeah, they always say barristers are just failed actors, don't they? So
well, a lot of barristers are just theatre kids at heart, and that is definitely us. I think that is something that you wouldn't necessarily think would help you in a legal career, but advocacy is all about theatrics. It's all about how you say something, how you come across, the intonation you put on certain words. And I think that in a backwards way, being able to perform on stage, sort of act in a way, is really helpful when you do advocacy. And having that confidence with public speaking, going out and performing, is something that I think will be helpful. So if you have anything like that, don't discount that. Definitely put that on your CV. I think that would be really useful.
I agree. So another thing that I think is important and relates to relevant experience is sign yourself up for mooting competitions or plea mitigation competitions, anything you can to, to kind of put your advocacy skills to the test in a setting that it's not going to necessarily matter if you don't do so well, or it's a really good way of practicing. Both me and India did a plea mitigation, which we both passed, and we both got into the final, didn't we?
Yeah, I came out thinking, I've messed that right up. I was like, there's no chance I've got through there whatsoever. Imposter syndrome, the monkey, whatever you said, the chimp, it was there in my ear. And then I got an email saying, you're through to the final. I text Lou, and she was like, I'm through as well. And we were like, thank goodness we were in this together. So we went through, we did the final, and Lou came second and I came third. We were super, super pleased with that. I mean, it was out of like 30 students, was it, Lou?
28, I think. 28, 30.
Yeah, like 28 to 30 students. So yeah, it was out of 100 students, guys.
Yeah.
We were super pleased with that, and that really, again, helped us with our experience tackling questions asked to you by the judge. You have to think on your feet in situations like that, so it's all really good experience. One little thing I'd just like to touch on finally is try and get any sort of free certification you can get. So I have a Lexis Library Legal Research Certificate, which is just a free research certification that you can go and get just by doing a quick sort of test. And it was free, super easy to get onto, and it just adds that little bit extra to your CV, doesn't it? So that's also a really good thing to look into.
See, I mean, I can certainly speak for the employability team at Nottingham Trent and the library team at Nottingham Trent.
Yeah,
they see what courses they have on offer, because quite often they're the ones where they can sort of give you those extra bits and pieces as well. So, I mean, again, I can only speak for NTU, but I'm sure other unis offer similar courses, which can be really beneficial. Good luck to those who are applying for pupillage this round.
Yeah.
I hope that there's something from this that you can take away and maybe put into practice or use your application. If you've got any questions, I think we do in a couple of weeks want to do a bit of a Q&A session on here where we'll just answer questions that you guys have sent in. So if you do have anything that you want to raise either about pupillage applications or about anything more specific, we're also aware that exams are on the horizon. So if you've got anything you want to ask about as well, then get in touch.
Again, thank you so much, guys, for listening. We really appreciate anybody taking the time out of their day to listen to us drone on about a load of nothing.
Very
I didn't mean that. Really important detrimental stuff, and like we always say, we're learning too. Our CVs are not perfect, so don't take everything we say as the God's honest truth. Your Honour, we are learning too, and we are starting from the beginning. So yeah, next week we're going to be talking about the qualifying sessions and the ins, so which ins to pick, etc, etc.
With that, guys, we will see you next week.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.